So I am speaking to the one, the only.
Paul Greenberg. Well, I'm actually one of 20 million Paul Greenbergs in New York City.
Paul, who are you with?
I'm with myself, the 56 Group LLC, which is my consulting firm, and chairman of the CRM Evolution conference this year, last year, and several years before that.
Integration, more and more of these CRM solutions out there have pinpoint solutions, and it isn't just a CRM products, there are just a whole series of different kinds of products out there like email marketing and sales automation, whatnot. How important is getting all this stuff integrated to, I guess, a more successful sales and customer process?
Well, look, I mean, here's the simple story. The more information or knowledge that a salesperson or marketing person has about either a particular customer, a demographic group, the transactions of a customer through with a company, the interactions out on the web, the more information they have, the better decisions they can make, the better insight they can gain. Now, the reality is that if you're looking at enablers of that, technology systems will enable it. Now, where's the information buried? Well, could be buried in financial part of their system as the transaction and purchase history of the customer and the amount of money they spend and so on could be there. It could be out on the social web, and conversations about your brand by this customer with their peers. It could also be in the traditional kind of system of record that CRM provides, where it's the actual transactions that what they have purchased for how much and when. It could be there. The reality is you are much better off knowing all of that than a part of that. And in order for that to happen, you deal with several real issues on the technology side. Number one is companies have invested, let's say, millions of dollars in their financial system. Companies have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in some social web experimental or even mainstream system. And they've invested several million in a CRM system. And they want to figure out how to tie this together. There's only one way to tie it together. You find you have to integrate the systems. You don't want to throw it all out and start fresh. You're going to spend millions of dollars again. What's the point? And there's nothing wrong with these systems functioning, but that creates technology issues, right? I mean, so for example, the way most systems integrate is through APIs, through, essentially pieces of code that allow them to talk to each other, communicate with each other. And it's not an easy integration because they're built around different architectures sometimes, not usually that so much, but different frameworks. Sometimes even the way that the way they communicate internally, the way they work internally, and the processes that are being used, the business rules that are associated with it are very different from system to system. Sometimes it's even the language that each system uses because they come from different vendors, right? All of those things have to be taken into account. Plus, they have to seamlessly integrate so that all that knowledge and data, if you're looking at it from just the standpoint of the information itself, just a pure information side, have to be accumulated in some common system of record so that the knowledge is available to those who need it in the format it's needed. All of those things are issues of integration, but integration is critical because A, when push comes to shove, you're not about to go throw everything you did out, and B, all the information is residing in all these places, and it's a way of aggregating all that info.
Are you seeing in this marketplace, because there's a desire to integrate, either one of two things happening, sort of middleware that connects completely disparate systems, or companies that have a really good export-import feature that it can literally pull from your most expensive system to another system?
I mean, you see some of both. You see more middleware, really. More APIs is what you see, really. The interesting thing is that, I mean, the higher scale, higher scope and scale you're talking about, the more likelihood you're going to deal with an API than export-import actually is several more. See, if you're dealing with APIs and they're working well, it's continuous bidirectional communication. If you're exporting import, step one, step two, step one, step two. I mean, there's a lot more processes in the way, and it takes a longer time, and isn't necessarily as effective because it has to translate on the export-import. Now, don't get me wrong, the APIs have to translate between systems too, but they're continuous, right? And The translation tends to be a lot better in the APIs now than it is in just the sheer export import. That's a blanket statement, but good enough for the purposes of this video.
Excellent. Hey, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure, sir.